Hello everyone. Welcome to the lecture titled Equality as Rights and as Policy. This lecture is part of your paper on media and margins. In this lecture, we will develop an understanding of the concept of equality and how it has evolved itself as a right and as a policy. Simultaneously, the lecture shall also highlight how the media plays an important role in not only spreading of equality amongst the citizens, but also assisting the government in making egalitarian policies for the consolidation of social justice. Understanding the concept of equality. When one hears of the term equality, what resonates in our mind is the absence of the differential treatment and treatment of all at par with one another, irrespective of caste, creed, color or sex. The concept of equality stresses on the equal opportunities to all and equal access to resources. However, there's a famous saying by Rousseau, "A man is born free, yet in chains." This encapsulates the existing fissures and cleavages in the society. As a man is born, he is believed to be free and equal to one another in nature. He is free to access the natural resources, but with his interaction with the social world, he finds it difficult to skip the fractures produced by the society in economic, political, and social spheres. According to Rousseau, there are two types of inequalities: natural inequality and social inequality. The natural inequality germinates from the unequal division of the physical and mental capacities or abilities among the different members of the society. As also highlighted by the modern Indian thinkers like Jyotiba Phule, Ambedkar and Periyar, the society in India has been fragmented by the concepts of class, caste and gender hierarchies, where the privilege of access to resources and opportunities are enjoyed by the powerful, who eventually even dominate the weaker sections of the society that comprise of women, scheduled castes, scheduled tribes and so on. Thus, a counter response to the existing inequalities in the society, the concept of equality asserts on equal social, political, civil and economic rights. It emphasizes upon equal protection of all before law and equal protection of law and growth and development of all. Evolution of the concept of equality in Europe. Since the inception of Western political ideas, equality has always been a contested idea. The early Greek city-states were based on graded inequality. The famous Greek philosophers Plato and Aristotle promoted inequality. They refused to incorporate foreigners, women, and slaves into their ideal state. This institution of inequality in Greece justified slavery and did not consider the slaves as human beings. Both slaves and women were regarded as the property of the men, who were given the privilege over the rest of the sections of the society. However, the Stoics and Spartacus opposed slavery and believed in the idea of citizenship based upon universality and fraternity. Spartacus was the leader of the slaves who firmly opined that the blood of all men was of the same color. He even waged a war but failed to succeed. Roman jus gentium, or the law of nations, was the first progressive step towards the concept of equality. However, the Romans too were accused of discriminatory attitudes towards the non-Romans. The early society in the West was divided into the clergy, noblemen and the common people. The clergy and the noblemen enjoyed the privileges over the common people. Thus, the Christian ideal of equality was not to be enjoyed during a lifetime. Rather, the idea of universality proclaimed was to be realized in heaven. In modern times, the struggle between the bourgeoisie and the divine rights of the king saw the emphasis on equality. Jus gentium finds its seeds in the Roman legal system that refers to the legal code. The glorious revolution of 1688 saw the rise of the liberals, who represented the individualistic ideas. They raised their voices against the absolutist power of the king. The liberals took men as the focal point of activities of the state and believed that all men possess rationality and dignity that needs to be protected by the state. Unlike the early Western political thinkers like Plato, who in his work Republic excluded the slaves and foreigners and believed that the ruler has the divine power, Hobbes advocated that all men are equal by nature. Locke, on the other hand, opined to understand political power aright and derive it from its original, we must consider a state also of equality, wherein all the power and jurisdiction is reciprocal, no one having more than the others. Rousseau, on the other hand, believed that man by nature was born equal, who enjoyed equal access to natural resources. However, it was the man's talent and skills and his claims over his possession of resources that fettered inequality among men. The liberals were the advocates of freedom and equality of the individuals. However, the right to equality was clubbed into a group right. Then several factors such as economic status, political power, cultural rights of the majority started playing major role in the furthering of inequality in society. This divided people into rich and poor, resulting into the structural differences. The proponents of free interplay of market, like Adam Smith, allowed all to work in the system of market, but gradually in the process, the rich became richer and the poor became poorer. The society was divided into proletariats and bourgeoisie. It was at this time only that the role of press became important. Press laid a forum of debate before the revolution. Since the invention of the printing press in Europe, the press and the politics have been closely associated with one another. Voltaire and Montesquieu would not have disseminated the theoretical debates on equality under democracy sans the aid of the media. The famous philosophical debate between Pascal and Descartes owes its existence to the press. It became a vehicle to channelize the theoretical base to the political movement for the democracy amongst the bourgeoisie. The role of the press was well defined and it communicated with the citizens of the state on behalf of the government authorities. Later, it was realized by the bourgeois state that democracy cannot be expanded without the allowance of freedom of press. With the American and French revolutions, liberty, equality, and fraternity impregnated the parliament, where amidst the executive, judiciary, and legislature, the media was declared as the fourth pillar of democracy. Herbert J. Altschul said, "In a democracy, it is the people who rule, and their voices are heard in the voting booths." The decisions made by the people in voting booths depend upon the information made available to them. The news media primarily provides this information. Hence, the news media are indispensable to the survival of democracy. To carry the assumption a bit further, a democracy is a free society. In no other form of government are citizens free. Hence, for a society to be free, the flow of information to the citizens must come from news media that are free as well. By now, this is a central assumption not only to the Americans, but also to most other citizens in the capitalist world. Thus, from the above historical development of the concept of equality, it could be learned that equality was a generic product of the rise of liberals and the stress on individualism. Liberals like Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau made citizens as their focal point of study and demanded the protection of equal rights. Gradually, with the advent of democratic states, thinkers like Voltaire and Montesquieu, with the aid of media, demanded the state for the protection of equal rights. The freedom of press and the expansion of democracy were parallel to one another. So equality developed in a generic manner in the West, but it was completely opposite in the case of India. Evolution of the concept of equality in the Indian context. In ancient India, Varnashram Dharma was the basis of society, which was a hierarchical order of caste and patriarchal institutions. The Indian society was divided into 4 Varnas and it was determined by birth. Women played a secondary role to men. Their sexuality and mobility was controlled by men to maintain the caste hierarchy, resulting into endogamy. Manu supported caste hierarchy and justice was dependent upon diversity of customs. Even Kautilya's Arthashastra promoted such hegemony. Even Al-Barani's Ain-e-Akbari and Fatwa-e-Jahandari formulated the monarchical order of the society. The ulemas and mujtahids were identical to the upper caste order that acted as an interpreter of customary laws to the king. Buddhist ideology, however, promoted egalitarianism. Buddhist sanghas were democratic in nature that targeted equal treatment of all irrespective of caste or gender. In modern India, scholars like Nicholas Dirks opines that the idea of equality, liberty, citizenship, and so on emerged with the advent of the British in India. According to Sudipta Kaviraj, modernity in India comprised of distinct features like capitalist industrial production, political institutions like democracy, and a shift in the society from a community towards an individual. These 3 factors were strong arguments for the advent of the rise of equality as a right in the Indian scenario. Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Vivekananda, and other social reformers tried to bring a social flux by discussing the universal rights. They spoke against the inhuman injustices and unequal treatment meted out to women in the Indian society and tried to bring a change through the introduction of many reform societies like Brahmo Samaj and Arya Samaj. Several other thinkers like Gandhi, Ambedkar, and Nehru stood for egalitarian rights in social, economic, and political spheres. They brought in women, scheduled castes, scheduled tribes in the mainstream society by raising their voices against the imperial power. Gandhi's Harijan Sevak Sangh discussed the economic empowerment of the Harijans. Ambedkar's annihilation of caste emphasized upon the need for doing away of the caste system. And Nehru's discovery of India highlighted the newly created space for civil society in India based on democratic ideals. In the post-independent India, Ambedkar, while framing the Constitution of India, derived heavily from the Buddhist Dhamma and the French Revolution, stressing on liberty, equality, and fraternity. The Constitution of India, under Article 14, discusses equality before law and equal protection of the law. Under the equality before law, the state ensures that there is no discrimination on any ground, while under the equal protection of law, it provides for affirmative action policies such as reservation. The state, in order to bring the marginal to the mainstream society, restrict the rights of the privileged section and channelize that source to the margins. Through affirmative policies, they try to protect the rights of the weak and bring them at par. Thus, it brings us to the interesting theoretical debate between equality as a right and as a policy. Theoretical debates on equality as a right and as a policy. Based on the assumption that equality is complementary to liberty, the former as a right is one of the fundamental rights for the citizens of India. As an influence of the American and the French revolutions in the past, the right to equality as a fundamental right under Article 14 in the Indian Constitution aims at treating all individuals at par, irrespective of caste, class, or gender. It aims at the provision of treatment of all individuals at equal worth or value. It seeks to protect the weak and provide the minimum basic requirements of food, shelter, and economic parity. The right to equality guarantees egalitarianism in the economic, social, and political arena. According to Barker, the end of any legal association or state is to assemble and establish the external conditions required by every citizen for the development of his capacities, and this end is justice. According to Robert Tucker, the idea of justice connotes a rightful balance in the situation where two or more parties or principles are in conflict. According to Ben and Peters, to act justly then is to treat all men alike except where there are relevant differences between them. Thus, equality is understood differently by various thinkers. John Rawls, in his distributive theory of justice, attempts to resolve the problems of social contract through stressing on more liberty and inclining on justice as fairness. However, this form of justice and equality was contradicted by Amartya Sen, where he questioned the universality of the equal right given by the state, as also the equality of what. According to Sen, the theory of utilitarianism targets the maximization of the distribution of the available resources according to the happiness of the largest number. However, the theory of utilitarianism is problematic, as not all have the same utility functions. Thus, he proposed for equality of capability. He opined basic capability is a partial guide to the part of moral goodness that is associated with the idea of equality. We have argued that as a partial guide, it has virtues that the other characterizations of equality do not possess. Second, the index of basic capabilities, like utility, can be used in many different ways. Basic capability equality corresponds to total utility equality, and it can be extended in different directions. The index can be used also in a way similar to utilitarianism, judging the strength of a claim in terms of incremental contribution to enhancing the index value. The main departure is in focusing on a magnitude different from utility as well as the primary goods index. The new dimension can be utilized in different ways, of which basic capability equality is only one. Under this paradigm of social justice, there are two broad approaches. One, the redistributive claim, seeks a more just distribution of resources and goods. Examples include claims for redistribution from the north to the south, from the rich to the poor, and from owners to workers. A second type of social justice claim is the politics of recognition. Here, the goal in its most plausible form is a difference-friendly world where assimilation to majority or dominant cultural norms is no longer the price of equal respect. Examples include claims for the recognition of the distinctive perspectives of ethnic, racial, and sexual minorities, as well as of gender difference. This type of claim has recently attracted the interest of political philosophers, some of whom are seeking to develop a new paradigm of justice that puts recognition at its center. Michael Walzer conceives equality as a plural conception with many different inequalities cancelling each other out, so that overall people are equal, even as they are unequal in specific respects. Walzer calls this notion complex equality, which according to him is preferable over traditional conceptions of equality, which he calls simple equality. Walzer's theory is of value mainly because of his emphasis that the social ideal of equality is best served when distinct goods such as money are not allowed to dominate the distribution of other goods such as public office or the political process. This brings us to the next discussion on the understanding of equality as to how media contemplates with equality, not only as a right but as well as a policy. Media and equality. In the era of globalization, media has emerged as a strong weapon of social management in a democratic setup. Media, with the advancement in technology, cover a wide range to influence the public opinion at individual level and the policy level. In democracies, people elect their leaders who through campaign govern and shape the policies of the government. Media on the consumer front aid the citizens to be conversant about the processes of policies of the government, while on the other hand, it gives feedback to the government for its policies. The recent even-odd policy by the Delhi government to control air pollution comprised of the opinions of people from all walks of life, who even assisted in the formulation of the policy. This way, the media assists in the integration of all citizens in the policy making and contribute in the establishment of democratic principle of equality. However, there is also the other side of the coin, where media is even blamed for covering the activities of the people who are in power or live in the heart of the nation, and often ignoring or miscommunicating what is happening at the borders. Kashmir issue is the most suitable example to understand this aspect, where the media is often blamed for not highlighting enough the ethnic, social and political issues. While on the other hand, it gave full coverage to various movements like Jats, Patels and Gujars for claiming reservations. There have also been cases like in the emergency under Mrs. Indira Gandhi's regime, where the freedom of media had been curtailed. Also, as highlighted by Dr. R.K. Rawat, there are very few Dalit journalists working in the media. In government media, Dalit and tribal journalists and media professionals are appointed in reservation quota. In mainstream media and private media, few Dalit and tribal journalists are working, but they are not getting good salaries and posts in the media houses, and they are not getting more byline stories. Most of the editors of media houses and owners are not giving important assignments, opportunity and responsibility to Dalit and tribal journalists. This raises the question as to how equal is the media itself in its approach. Conclusion. Let us now sum up what we have learned in this lecture. First, we learnt about the evolution of the concept of equality and the theoretical debates surrounding its evolution, so as to understand it as a right and as a policy. We understood that the media plays an important role in rejuvenating equality in the social environment. On the one hand, it makes the citizens conversant of their rights, such as equality, liberty, and on the other hand, it gets the feedback to the government of its policies and aid in making them improve its efficacy. Thus, media can be termed as the fourth important pillar of democracy that helps in the consolidation of equality. The presence of inequality in society shall impregnate rupture of social bonds, resulting in the exclusion and discrimination of individuals and groups in society. In India, equality was never a generic term. It was exported from the West. Thus, the people in Indian media play a significant role in the creation of an awareness about equality. Therefore, it becomes important to restore and rehabilitate our rights of equality. For more details, kindly refer to the e-text of this lecture and the extended reading list. Please attempt all the questions given in the end. Thank you.